Good morning and welcome to an Established Medicines webinar on licensing and looking through a revised process that we are going to be working through. So thank you very much to everybody for your attendance. This webinar will be recorded and will be published so people can then see what is happening. What we will also do is do some question and answers at the end, so that in the chat of this meeting, there will be a Slido link that people can access to then run through what they would like to ask us going forward. As a bit of a background to the presentation, I really want to make sure that people understand that our aim and our vision is to be a truly world-leading and enabling sovereign regulator. And we're looking to do that through the right regulation, focusing on science and delivering outcomes for patients. And that means right the way through from innovation in the original OEM products to generic applications, and we want to be making sure that we promote innovation right the way across the board. Our strategic priorities over the 3-year cycle that we're in at the moment, and a bit of relate to what does that mean to me and what do we want to be seeing in the agency, so that you can see there are 4 priorities. So these priorities are maintaining public trust, enabling access, having the scientific and regulatory excellence, and then becoming the agency where people flourish. So to that, what I really want to ensure that means, and as I presented in other forums, we want to be open and transparent. We want to be predictable for approvals and inspection. We want to be relationship building with all of our stakeholders, and we want to be focused on our people and the relationships people have and development. Really then looking to have some clear understanding. This webinar is about the backlog that we have and understanding what that is. And I just really wanted to be very clear on our prioritization of work queue so that people can understand how do we work, so that we work through public health priority as the main overarching priority. So where we see shortages, where we see them in the short or long term, we will prioritize and we will pull medicines through for those. Where we will look to see where we have for first medicines, for example, first generics, where we have quite a number of applications in the pipe, that ceases to be so much of a priority for new medicines joining. And shortages, where we see there is a real defined shortage as identified by Department of Health, we will then look to pull that through and work with Department of Health, NHSE, and devolved administrations to ensure that we pull and resolve those shortages from an MHRA perspective as far as we can do. Obviously, after that, we will then be looking at first in, first out. So drivers for change. So really looking at what are we doing and why are we doing it? We are looking to make sure overall that we are having a process which makes decisions and tries to approve the applications in the pipeline as far as we can do. So really with that ethos that we are looking with process changes to try to be a bit more decisive, more clear on requirements, link with companies to ensure that that is understood, but then also make decisions quickly so that hopefully the aim of this will be to approve medicines that are in our backlog. We want to be making the process quicker. We want to reduce the work in progress so that we want to make sure that the time in the processing steps are reduced. We want to develop a culture change in both industry and in the agency to see how we can then ensure that we have fast review, clear guidance, and then we go to simplification of what we're doing in our process. So stripping it back to what is required in HMRs, stripping it back to make sure that those requirements are clear. In addition to the process change, we are bringing in additional capability. So that does mean bringing in additional resources to help with this clearance. But where we see we will not be able to clear the backlog without making process changes along at the same time. If you go on to the next slide, please. So just to come through to our performance currently. So we are publishing our metrics on the website every month. And this is where we are looking at. So for January, I know we're in March now, but we are in the process of collating information for the February performance. That will be published on the 15th of March as normal. But what I can tell you is that the overdue individual product licenses total, as we see it right now, will be 1,019, where we are tracking against an original backlog that we set in stone against the 9th of January. We have cleared something over 234 licenses in the first 8 weeks of the year, and that takes us to, against the total that we had in the backlog at the 9th of January, that takes us down to 927. So when you see that the numbers are being processed in both variations and in type in the established medicines backlog, the numbers are increasing month on month. So with the process changes, what is effective from the 1st of March 2024? So that the key changes from that, which have been published on the website, are incomplete applications will not be processed. We will only be having one round of request for further information questions to be sent. And then following approval, we're asking applicants to support us with a pre-populated template for the lay summary for the UK Public Assessment Report. What we're really looking to do with these changes is to make sure that we are streamlining the process. We're making sure that we're only sending out RFI points that are really tangible to the quality, safety, and efficacy review of medicines. And these will be very clear to understand that the applicant can question and can raise a question against the RFI, but they are making sure that we are clear with our requirements and how do we ensure that the application can be progressed as quickly as possible. So if we go on to the next slide. We have already implemented quite some numbers of changes. So going through last year, we are looking at application conversion so that for applications that were already in our queue, we are still accepting conversions to under those previous regulations. So if they were submitted prior to 1st of January, we do have checklists which have been developed with industry to support applicants to complete applications right first time. And we are looking to see how we can continuously improve all the time, highlight the most common issues, highlight the most common aspects in that process. And then if I hand over to my colleague, Rachel Broccoli.
Thanks, Julian.
Deputy Director for Population Health.
Thanks, Julian. I think your internet slightly slowed down there. So yeah, just to reiterate that I'm Rachel Broccoli and the Interim Deputy Director of Population Health. So we're going to go through some more of the detail around the guidance we've published. So the first section of the guidance relates to the revised process for applications received and where assessment has not yet started. So 2 weeks prior to us picking up the application, we intend to notify the applicants by email that we're going to pick up the assessment of that marketing authorisation application. So at this point, we would really like the applicants to submit a marked up, a kind of side-by-side comparison of the product information. So we're talking about the SMPC and also the text of the patient information leaflet. And we want to see the side-by-side comparison against the appropriate reference product, if applicable. That should be submitted via a new eCTD sequence in the usual way via the MHRA submissions portal. In addition, applicants have the opportunity to provide updated GMP certificates and QP declarations at that time too. At this point, I would just like to reiterate that, that option is open. The option of updating your dossier is open for applications that are in the backlog at any point. So if you, on review of your submission, think that perhaps some of it is out of date or that you had omissions within that, you are welcome to submit updated sequences that will be taken into account on our first assessment. However, if you review your dossier and you think actually you're not going to be able to update or it has significant deficiencies, at that point you are welcome to withdraw your application, and that is before we have started assessment. If you did that, you would then receive a 90% refund of your application fee, and that's detailed in the fee regulations. So beyond this point, if anybody wanted any kind of requests for extensions to any of the response times further into the procedure, these will not be granted. We won't be granting extensions at the moment, unless there are particular circumstances that require us to consider those extensions in the face of a public health need and to minimise any impact on patients. And of course, this is going to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, considering the product that is under consideration. Next slide, please. Thank you. Yeah, so what we are going to do when we pick up your applications from our queue, we're going to carry out a technical completeness check of the application, and we will move to refuse if certain required data have not been submitted. For example, if we find that it is an incomplete dossier. Even if commitments have been given that they will provide that data later in the process. Moving on then, applications which are technically complete will be assessed. If at that point, following assessment, we find that there are deficiencies and they present a serious risk to public health, we're going to refer the application to CHM. In that instance, any applications that are referred to CHM, there will be the usual appeal rights that follow the CHM letter. If there are no potential serious risk to public health identified, then we will send out an RFI, as we usually do, the request for further information. However, we will not be sending more than one RFI, and to make people aware that in certain circumstances, we won't be sending out or circulating the assessment report alongside the RFI. What we will endeavour to do in that situation is ensure that the points are sufficiently detailed such that the applicants will know exactly what the deficiency is and the type of data we're expecting to see as part of the response. Applicants will have 60 calendar days to respond to this request as is current. That's the current deadline that people have in their RFI. And we will provide a contact email for companies to be able to get in touch with the relevant assessors. And what we're intending for that to be used for is for clarification of the question raised, not pre-assessment of any particular data or negotiation on any kind of limits, mainly clarification on the questions that are raised. Beyond that, there will be 3 possible outcomes. So if the response is submitted within 60 days and it's complete and the responses are satisfactory, we will move to approve the application. If the response is incomplete or doesn't resolve the issues that have been raised from a quality, safety or efficacy perspective, then we will at that point refer it to CHM for advice on refusal. If no response is received within 60 days, then we will refer the application to CHM for advice on refusal. Next slide, please. So we've covered the pending applications where we haven't done the first assessment, but obviously there's a number of applications in our system which have received the first assessment and are waiting response assessments. So section 2 of the guidance covers applications which are already under assessment and where people may have received a request for further information. So even if you have already been issued an RFI, we are going to limit the next round of response, the next round of assessment to one further RFI, one further and final RFI. If we do not receive a response to our final RFI within 60 days, or again, there is insufficient evidence of quality, safety and efficacy against the points that were raised, we will take the application to CHM for advice on refusal. Once the response to the final RFI has been assessed, we will take a decision on approval or refusal, and we're going to do that using the previous criteria that we went through. So again, if the response submitted within 60 days is complete, we will approve the application. If the response is incomplete or does not resolve the issues raised, then we're going to refer to CHM for advice on refusal. And again, if we do not receive a response within 60 days, we will again refer that application to CHM. Next slide, please. So a further change to the process, which is outlined in section 3 of the guidance, is around the UK public assessment reports. So for all applications, those which are pending first assessment and those which are already undergoing assessment, we are asking applications to provide a template pre-populated with the lay summary part of the UK public assessment report. And that will be requested following an assessment decision to approve. If the application is approved, then the draft UK public assessment report supplied by the applicant is going to be further completed with the technical details by the MHRA and published on our website as usual. Where necessary, prior to the publication of the final public assessment report, we will consult marketing authorisation holders further on the text of the final public assessment report. We envisage that will not be needed at all on all occasions, but it may be needed on certain case-by-case occasions.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you to Rachel and to the team for managing the Slido, and really want to thank you. And obviously, if there are questions following this, if there are other topics which we feel that we can be clearer on answering some of the questions around the completeness technical check, other aspects of the process, then obviously please come back to us via the Customer Experience Centre, and we will be looking then to answer those questions. And also, as for other things, we will iterate guidance, we will update as we find that things that we can improve for clarity, and we will add additional things in there. But if there's anything else that people would like to look at. So thank you to everybody. Rachel, I don't know if there's any other comments that you'd like to make.
No, just thank you very much for joining us this morning, and and thank you for your cooperation.
Yeah, and then finally, just from me, a real thank you to all the assessors, because they are working extraordinarily hard to work through this. So as a final thank you to all the assessors that are looking at this as well. So thank you and appreciate your time.